Okay,
Yeah.
go.
These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
Well, there we are. An intro with a slight difference today on the Analyst Inside Cricket, because you've guessed it, we're going to be talking boots. Not the type that Nancy Sinatra is singing about there, of course, but the important topic of cricket boots, bowling boots. And we have two veterans of the bowling brotherhood here on the show today. Former Middlesex and England fast bowler Angus Fraser. Gus.
Hello there, you're right.
You're right, yeah, good morning to you. And also former England and Essex bowling all-rounder Derek Pringle. Is that a fair description, bowling all-rounder?
Absolutely. These
From only
boots are
5 to-
made for bowling.
Yes.
Correct. Well, I mean, the idea of this topic today was brought about by you because you wrote a blog on our Substack newsletter, the Crickverse,
Yeah.
CRICVERSE, which showed a picture of your fantastic bowling boots from the 1980s with the holes cut out of the toes. And I mean, you know, we'll get into that in a minute and why we're talking about that today. But I mean, just first, just talk about what you're doing currently. Pring, you're now, you know, you're a music aficionado in a way as much as a cricket one.
Well, I like records.
Well, that makes you a music. I mean, how many records have you got now? Vinyl.
Thousands.
Thousands and thousands.
More than the runs, first class runs I scored, I reckon.
and you go to lots of sort of record fairs and things. What's your latest, favourite purchase?
Well, if you're talking about sort of, current records, the other day I made a purchase. The Waterboys got a very fine album out called The Life and Death of Dennis Hopper. And it's been given 5 stars by the critics. So, give that a listen. Give that a listen.
Okay, well, maybe, yeah. Well, if I can find a copy, yeah, sure. And Gus, now you've had different. I think you must be celebrating probably 40 years as a person at Middlesex, either player, coach, director of cricket, etc. What's your
benefit? Give him a benefit.
Benefit year as well, yeah. Another benefit.
Testimonial. It was benefits and then testimonials, wasn't it?
I think is it 40 years?
No, well, I had 8 years sort of with the Independent, didn't I? So I had 18, 19 years as a player, and I've had, I suppose, 15, 16 years now as a administrator as such. Now with Middlesex in the Community, which is the the charitable arm of Middlesex County Cricket Club, overseeing participation in recreational cricket. So very much back where you started, really, with clubs and in the community, and trying to get as many young boys and girls, especially from disadvantaged areas in the county, playing cricket and experiencing the good that cricket can bring.
Yeah, and are you finding that it not easy, but I mean, you finding there's a lot of enthusiasm and interest? I mean, Middlesex obviously now in the second division, and not necessarily one of the most prominent counties, but you feel there's a lot of cricket going on in the county still.
Yeah, I mean, Middlesex is a huge. I mean, Middlesex, so the 17 boroughs of northwest London, is a hugely important place, really. I mean, the biggest asset the county's probably got is the love of cricket and the number of people playing cricket. It's a huge community. We struggle to keep up with demand, i.e. the number of pitches and facilities. And again, it's probably the most diverse cricketing community in the country. We're the only totally urban county. So, yeah, there are challenges, but there's a sort of real energy and excitement about the cricket that's played in Middlesex. And it's challenging in lots of ways, but equally it's exciting to be involved in.
Yeah, sure. Well, listen, I've worked out that between us, we bowled in first class or one day cricket. We bowled 172,428 deliveries. That's just in the matches. taking over 3,000 wickets between us. You two over 1,000, and me about 750. And I mean, it's an amazing number of balls bowled, and one forgets in a way that obviously you need to get your body in the right condition to be able to bowl fast. And you guys both had large bodies in terms of height, so a lot of weight going into those deliveries as well. And I suppose one forgets that key moment, the key thing, the key item in your kit bag is actually your boots, isn't it? It's not your bat or your pads or your helmet. Really, for bowlers, it is your boots, isn't it? Is that what sort of brought you to bringing that subject to the fore and writing about it?
Yes, and also I had a photograph of those boots, of course. that whole series is about photos that I've taken or I set up, and that was taken with my camera. That one, but obviously I was holding the boots at the time, and it was taken by a guy that Gus and I both know pretty well, and you probably do too. Well, Winston Bynorth, he was a mate of mine from university, and he became a sports photographer. But I made him take it with my camera, so. That's where that came from.
That gives you the intellectual property then, if it's taken with your camera, does it?
Well, I set it all up. It was my idea and everything. So yeah, it's my photo. I just had to be in it.
but it's a great photo. Which
I mean, it's so important, and I guess everyone had sponsors and things when Gus and I and you played, bat sponsors, kit sponsors, etc. But nobody. Well, to my knowledge, had a boot sponsor. I mean, Gus had to go and have his, fork out lots of money to have his bespoke made by a guy in Birmingham, I think. And I had those ones made by Hope Sweeney. But of course, incorporated in the design of those was the fact that you couldn't replace the spikes. So there was an obsolescence built into them. So when the spikes worn down, that was it. You had to have another pair. And of course, I think Hope, who was a very old man when I bought the boots off him in 82 on that 82 Three Ashes tour, had died. So eventually I found some. Kookaburras did them out of nice kangaroo skin as well. And here's a pair I started to wear at the end.
Hold them across the screen a bit more. Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
I still smell. I could smell the Essex turf on the sole.
I mean, we should just go back a bit because, of course, what you mentioned, the fact that you have to buy those. You and Gus and I had to buy our boots. I mean,
indeed.
Faster now, you think of the boots in operation now. Cristiano Ronaldo's Mercurials, which obviously gets paid millions to wear. I'm thinking Michael Jordan, the Air Jordans. He was the guy that sort of put Nike on the map, really, and obviously he was paid millions to wear those. But it wasn't quite as a luxurious a situation for us, Gus, was it? We did have to buy it.
No,
you had yours made. You had yours, tailor made, didn't you?
Yeah, and I suppose again when you sort of go back to the start and you sort of think, well, all those balls that we bowled, and you think, well, the delivery is probably 30-yard run up, 10-yard, 15-yard follow through. You walk back, you're actually getting up sort of 15 miles a day on your feet as a bowler, running in, moving around in the field. So it's you're spending a lot of time in there. And I mean, Don Bennett was someone, an old coach who sort of, I suppose, was ahead of his times in lots of ways, even though he was quite sort of old-fashioned in the way that he used to manage people. But again, it's stressing the importance of looking after your feet as a fast bowler, and having Wayne Daniel in the dressing room, and he, I think, had Hope Sweeney boots, didn't he? He used to get his boots made in Australia, and you're sort of chatting with the senior players there, and looking at those boots with envy, because at that time you were sort of almost running up in a pair of, I mean, I used to bowl in a pair of shoes like Patrick Traffords, I think they were called.
Yeah, JK used Patrick's, yeah.
Yeah, and then Gunnar Moore Seamers, which were pretty naff, and there was no real investment into sort of footwear technology, was there? They didn't provide support to a big, heavy blokes like myself and Derek, sort of thundering away. And I suppose I got to know a hero of mine was Richard Hadley. You find out that Richard Hadley used to get his footwear made by a bloke called Ian Mason, who took over Whiting's, which was in the Midlands, Sutton Coldfield. So, yeah, went up there. You get your foot sort of measured in a last, is produced, and he makes your boots to order. And you sort of think of the expense there as well. I mean, I think a pair of those boots were about 300 quid. This was back in sort of mid-1980s, and when you're on a contract of £3,500 for the summer, it's a pretty sizable investment, isn't it? It's like 10%. It's 1% of your sort of, well, maybe more than that. 10% of your, is it 10%? Yeah, 10% of your sort of earnings are sort of being invested in a pair of boots. But they were so important. And all right, I don't think anybody's feet are particularly pretty, are they? But my feet are in pretty good nick now, and I think that's because I really did look after my feet and invest in footwear. And again, all right, I moved away from Mason's when he retired or started to slow down, and it was around that time that Pony produced a decent boot called the Pony Paceman, and that was a really good cricket boot. And they were one of the first companies, I think, to invest in sort of what a bowler required. And things have improved since then. But equally now, I look, when I was at Middlesex as MD of cricket, you get bowlers like Stephen Finn. They have a pair of boots they like, but then Adidas changed the style because and it's not as comfortable. It doesn't wear, and they have to change the footwear, and they've suddenly got blisters and everything all over their feet. And you think, well, why are you changing your footwear? You should be wearing something that doesn't sort of hurt and damage your feet, because if suddenly you run up with blisters and stuff like that, it's obviously going to affect the way that you feel and the way that you bowl. So yeah, there's a huge amount going on there, and I always sort of, not that I ever did it, but there was an American basketball coach, and I can't remember his name. And the first thing he did to every player who became a professional was show them how to put the socks on. And because if you, again, base basketball, you get blisters. All of a sudden, you're out for a period. These blisters get infected. You're out for a period of time, and the importance of putting socks on correctly. So it seems something trivial, doesn't it? Just socks, footwear, but they're incredibly important for someone who is using their feet in such a way during their career.
Absolutely.
I'm glad Gus's feet are in lovely shape, because mine are absolutely disgusting, and that's because, I mean, if you talk to someone like Alec Bedser, he'd say, "Oh well, you know what you needed, those old, kind of boots that are sturdy." And I had a pair like that, Gary Sober's boots they were, and they were made of incredibly hard, unforgiving leather, but they were ankle boots. And the theory back then when I was at school was that, you needed to support the ankle as well. So, they laced up like sort of Dr. Martens halfway up your leg. But they were so unforgiving, and that's what started the sort of damage I did to my feet. I mean, which was then relieved by me cutting a hole in the toes of my boots, which is
well, you were the first to do that, really, Dale, weren't you? I mean, everybody remembers.
Well, no, not really, not really. I got the idea from Lily and Terry Alderman, who'd got Hope Sweeney's on the 82 Ashes tour, and I watched them bowling in the nets, and I noticed they had little flaps, and there were neater slits than I cut, but they'd done it, and I sort of said to them, "Why are you doing it?" They said, "Oh, well, it relieves the pressure. I mean, I bloody lose 3 toenails a season, whatever." Yeah.
And actually, I mean, that's a good point, because, talk about your feet, because it is unusual, isn't it, the way that a bowler needs footwear in the sense that you've got to run in first. This is a fast bowler, obviously. You run in first, so you need that kind of springiness in the sole, but then you need really good spikes to grip, because you've got to stop and release the ball. And
well, that's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned the spikes, Yoz, because on that 82 3 Ashes tour, the first thing Willis said to me is, "What kind of spikes have you got on your boot?" And I had the ones we all used in England, which are sort of, flattened off at the end. And he said, "They'll be no good over here. You'll skate. The pitches are so hard." And you had to get those like needle spikes, like, in those days, like sprinting shoes for athletics, sharp needle spikes. And obviously you had to unscrew them all and put them all in.
I had a hip problem, and I think that was caused by myself fielding a mid-on. There's a sort of quick single, me running to the stumps at mid-on from the side, not my spikes not catching the ground right, and just skating and landing on my hip, which probably sort of damaged a bit of cartilage that caused me some problems. So, yeah, getting the right spikes. And again, where you land, when you keep landing on earth in a certain position, it roughs up. It sort of becomes uneven. There's other bowlers bowling there who land in a slightly different place. So the support you get from that boot is incredibly important for you to have a solid platform to try and wing that ball down at 80, 85 miles an hour, whatever pace you bowl at.
Yeah, I mean, look at Mark Wood. I mean, there's been slow-mos, hasn't there, of him when he lands at the crease, and all the sort of ripples that go through your ankle and your foot and your calf and everything, and obviously your knee, which is at the moment why he's having a knee operation. It's so severe that there's this thing that it's at least 6 times your body weight you put through your legs every ball when you bowl as a faster bowler, and of course you need that support of the boot round your foot, and then the good grip, but you also need it to be forgiving, because otherwise you get that, as you say, the rubbing of your toe inside it, which has caused many people to cut the holes out of the boot. And I mean, also, I mean, it's just a silly story, but I used to drag my back foot as well. So I used to get a back foot boot quite badly scuffed, and actually a small hole would develop in the back foot boot, the right boot. The left boot was fine because I didn't drag it. I just landed with it and then followed through. So what I found was my left boots were always in great nick, and my right boot was always quite worn out. And because I had to buy my boots, I wasn't really in the market for sort of buying a boot, and when I only needed one. You can't just buy a right. So what I used to do, I mean, this is a terrible kind of indictment of my lack of professionalism, which neither of you'd be surprised about, was I used to keep the left boot fine, and batters used to be given lots of pairs of boots for free, which they hardly ever used. So I would find a batter like Clive Bradley or Mike Gatting, who had the same size foot as me, and just use one of their spare right boots and my own left boot. So basically I bowled in odd boots.
I always remember,
not even matching boots.
Not even matching. They were different makes.
I remember Graham Dilley. He used to have a big drag, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he used to almost Evo stick, didn't they? They used to put
He built it up with glue, didn't he?
Boot.
He built it up with glue, didn't he, Gus?
Yeah, Evo stick. They sort of just, and so there was this big sort of like strong protective sort of thing that protected the leather, wasn't it?
And it was squared off as well, because that could scrape along the surface more easily. It was sort of flattened. Yeah, he built up the sort of toe of his right boot with glue.
Yeah, I mean, and it's had a sort of almost a thing on top of it to protect the toe from wearing away.
Well, I think in the old days when lots of people dragged, they had toe plates.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, they had steel toe. I mean, I should have had one of those as well. But
my first pairs of Masons, I dragged a little bit. They had a sort of, I suppose, around my big toe, just on the sole, sort of the leather sole type area. There was a bit of metal around there to sort of just protect that, because I dragged a little bit, not the same as you, Simon, but just a touch when I sort of brought my right leg through.
Yeah, I mean, I was so disgusted by my bowling in South Africa one year with these odd boots, which I'm sure didn't really look good, that actually in the last match of the season, a Currie Cup game at Cape Town at Newlands, I bowled, I don't know, 20 overs, 1 for 100 or something, and I walked off and just took my boots off on the boundary line edge and chucked them in the bin. Just walked off in bare feet. I was so pissed off, and hopefully in the end I did wear, matching boots. But I was never kind of intelligent enough or professional enough to go and have my boots handmade. So Gus, how long would your boots last? A pair of Masons?
Well, they'd rot. I mean, I sort of sweated a lot, so
nice.
So they got not nice though. I mean, actually, when you got the boots and they were new, I mean, the smell of the kangaroo skin and they were beautiful. They just looked and smelt gorgeous, type of thing. And but slowly but surely they'd get more and more decrepit.
Did you blanco them, Gus?
Did I what?
Blanco them? Did you whiten them ever?
No, not really. I just used to give them a white with a cloth, but never whiten them. No.
That was I started, when I was one of the jobs of the young pros.
Yeah, blanco the boots.
You remember this? You had to whiten the boots of all the senior players, didn't you? And put them out to dry.
Yeah,
they'd probably last a season, an English season, and that again a lot of overs. So 800 to 900 overs, probably a pair. So they're again. You look at some. I mean, I suppose it's I always again Don Bennett. You come back to Don Bennett, and I had a back injury when I was young, and I was sort of walking around with a trendy pair of hush puppies or whatever they were on there, and he just came up to me and said, "No wonder you got word back injury, wearing crap shoes like that, go and get yourself a decent pair of shoes. And I suppose for everybody, particularly big men, and sadly I got bigger since I stopped playing, but footwear's important, and it's worth spending a few £100 on a pair of shoes because they'll last you and they give you the support that you require, rather than you sometimes buy a cheap £40 pair of shoes and within 6 weeks they're bloody knackered, aren't they? So
did you ever go and speak to Mason and sort of give him, what your requirements? Did you discuss design with him?
Yeah, I used to go up there and see him. He used to do it all in his garage in Sutton Coldfield. So I used to go up there and see him sort of probably once a year, drive up there.
Yeah, because the interesting thing is that those Hope Sweeners, although they're as you say, works of art, Gus, those handmade boots, I mean, they were beautiful. He never incorporated much sort of sponginess to the or protection there, sort of shock absorb. And I remember Lily had a pair, and he still taped a big wadge of Sauberthane to his heel that he taped because the Hope Sweeneys didn't have enough, that absorption power, because obviously those Aussie pitches are so hard. I mean, you think we're putting a lot of force through it on English pitches, well, they're soft in comparison, but those Aussie pitches rock hard. And Lily, as I say, he'd tape a big wadge of Sauberthane to especially the landing heel.
Mason started putting foam in his. I mean, they started off, but again, I suppose it's just awareness, isn't it? And the fact that bowlers are having stress fractures, slamming it down, thought process in Sauberthane. People now have lasts made of their soles of their foot, don't they? So they're there to support. The whole development of looking after players' feet is so much better now than it was, and the quality of boots and the investment in boots. Again, at the end of my career, so Pony stopped. I think Pony went broke, and again, footwear technology into footwear wasn't great. So I'd end up buying a pair of Nike basketball boots, a pair of Air Jordans. Wow. There was a sort of place near Belmont Circle that sort of almost took over a market. Alistair, my brother, was very instrumental in that by sort of almost just getting a pair of cross trainers and taking them to this shop, and they'd shave a bit of the rubber off the bottom, put a cricket sole with spikes on it, and players would wear it. And I used to do that with a pair of basketball boots at the end of my career because you're thinking, well, Nike and Adidas and these companies are putting millions of pounds of thought into developing the boots, where sadly Duncan Fernley and Gunnar Moore and bat manufacturers are just doing it because they need to do it rather than because they're of a good quality.
Well, back in the day, not obviously Beefy was sponsored, Ian Botham was sponsored by Nike, but they only made the boots for him. They weren't interested in the cricket market. They only made them for him. Because I inquired, because they look really good, and I said, "Well, how do you get a pair of those, Beefy?" And he said, "Oh, well, they only make them for me." And he wasn't my size, so I couldn't nick a pair of his.
Listeners to you mentioned size there. Listeners to this may not realise that both of you are at least 6'6", and I just actually why I mentioned that is partly because that obviously was an asset when you were bowling, but also it wasn't so much of an asset when you were in India. Partly because the size of beds, probably, but also I just remember this one time when you were both working for newspapers. Probably Pring, you were working with the Telegraph, Gus, you worked with India, and we were in Mohali, Chandigarh, and you both got into one of those cycle rickshaws and sat on the back. And I remember that as you got into these two really big men, 6'6", probably 15 stone plus. Maybe I'm doing you a favour there. Yeah. Sat in the back of this cycle rickshaw with this little tiny Indian man trying to cycle you from somewhere, the hotel to a restaurant, and the whole bike, nearly the front bits with the cycle, nearly went up in the air when you sat down. Actually,
I remember that because we had to get out and walk until we got we were going uphill, and he said he can't.
That's right, slight incline.
We walked, and then when we got on a down slope, he got back in and started cycling again.
Yeah, he couldn't manage a slight incline.
But obviously, there are lots of very tall, very big cricketers, tall, fast bowlers. I'm just going to play you a little bit from one. Gus, you'll remember. Pring, you'll remember. Gus, you probably saw from a distance. Vincent van der Bijl, who played one season for Middlesex in 1980, and he was 6'8".
Well, before you go on, I remember him coming and bowling up at the nets at Fenners when I was still at university. And And although he didn't play in the match, he bowled. He did a little stint before Mike Brealey let him, have the game off and he could go home. And I marvel at the size of his boots because I reckon you could sail to Holland in them.
Well, yes.
So I don't know where he got them. So we're probably going to find out.
Well, that was exactly the question I asked him. I mean, a fabulous bowler, probably, in my view, probably the finest bowler that never played Test cricket, because he was always in that era. He played in South Africa in that era when they were suspended from international cricket, so he never got the chance to play for his country in an official Test match. But he took 85 wickets at 15 in that 1 year playing for Middlesex and had a fantastic career. Anyway, huge man. In fact, sadly to say, he had a fall the other day and he's in hospital at the moment. I think he's recovering okay. But he sent this message about the boots that he used to wear, which I'm just going to play off my phone.
Mine was size 17, and my boots were always crazy stuff, man. And they were pretty shit. I think the guy who did them for me was a guy called Weeks in the UK. And with 4 years to go, I persuaded him to come out of retirement. He was about 80 and do 2 pairs for me. And basically, when they packed up, I had to retire, but there were other reasons for my retirement. The one story I've got is that we always played the Transvaal and Natal match on Boxing Day. And I packed up, and as I unpacked my suitcase and I got to the hotel on Christmas Day, late in the evening, I suddenly realized I'd whitewashed my boots and left them on the windowsill. So I had to phone Chris James, and a lawyer friend of mine, whose father was the judge president of Natal, and say, Chris, I need you to break into the flat I'm staying at during the holidays. Get my boots, just crack a window, get my boots. And then I need Mr. Henwood, Pelham's dad. I need you to give him to Mr. Henwood's dad by 5 o'clock the next day, a hell of a thing. And which happened. So nothing had arrived by the time the game started, and we were fielding first. So I was sitting in the changing room, and eventually Mr. Henwood arrived as the first over was being bowled. So I was able to play. It was always a nightmare.
Right. Got a variation of that story. In the out of the blue, we had a Sunday league match up in Scarborough, and the club Essex decided that instead of us driving up there in our sponsored cars, we're all going to get on a coach. So we had a net. I remember at Chelmsford, and Gucci said, get all your bags sorted out, etc., etc. Now, Nick Knight and I both lived in Cambridge, so we said to them, can you pick us up en route? Because we don't want to drive all the way to Chelmsford to get on the coach. You're going to go past Cambridge. We'll just be out on the motorway, junction number 10. Anyway, we put all the cases out, but for some reason, mine didn't get loaded onto the coach. I don't know why. Anyway, we got to Scarborough, and, I've got all my whites and stuff in a separate bag that I brought up with me on the coach, but no cricket gear and therefore no boots. So I thought, I'm going to get the game off here. but Gucci was so bloody minded that he blamed me for my bag not being put on, even though it wasn't anything to do with me. He phoned up. He got the number of, it was a Sunday, obviously, Sunday morning. He got the number for a sports shop owner in Scarborough, his home number. Phoned him up and he said, have you got a pair of size 12 whatevers? And the bloke said, yes, but they haven't got any spikes in them, whatever. And he said, oh, well, we'll bring them down. And it basically made me play, but I couldn't bowl and I could only get these on because they were a snug size 12 without wearing any socks. So I fielded and batted in these brand new shoes that hadn't been broken in with no socks on, but didn't bowl.
I remember as well one day, I'd say by the end of your career, because you had more than one pair of boots. You used to sort of almost travel with a pair of rubbers because you might be Puma Sheffields or whatever because you were bowling in the indoor school. You'd have a pair of batting spikes, which a bit of a waste of time for someone like myself, and maybe a couple of pairs of bowling boots. So you had a bowling bag, and I just left it behind once. We were playing at Glamorgan the next day, and frantic got to there and realised they weren't there, and phoned my dad up, and bless him, my father drove down to Cardiff the following morning with my boot bag to drop them off so that I could play the following day.
What kind of look did he give you?
He was all right. He could come watch today's cricket. He was happy. Get out the house.
Fair enough.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm sure everybody's got stories of the times they left their boots behind. A couple of ex-players here that have sent in emails. Mike Watkinson Winker, who of course is the coach who basically taught Jimmy Anderson to swing the ball. So he's got a great legacy, never mind his own career. He said about his boots, he said Norman Walsh was the bootmaker in Bolton. He made my cricket and football boots before Reebok came along. The smell of glue was overpowering when you went into his little workshop. Couldn't have been too healthy for him. He said, my football boots were supposed to be made of kangaroo leather. I didn't lose many headers with them on.
Actually, Walsh, my brother used to get his footwear because he produced more of a slipper boot than a sort of ankle boot. And my brother, because he was a more athletic, sort of lighter through the crease seamer than myself, he used to get his boots made by Walsh.
Yeah. And then Ian Gregg, the brother of Tony Gregg, who is still alive, he says Whitings were my first handmade boots, very special low cut, but I found them too heavy. So Imran inherited them and wore them for years. And he never got them back, clearly. And I remember people actually borrowing my bats rather than my boots, which I couldn't use anyway, but you're using my bats. And this is a guy, an amateur player, who goes on Twitter by the name of @Bigerman. And he says, the sole of my brother's boots was starting to come away at the toe. He didn't have any glue, so he hammered a nail through between the big toe and the next one. This nail acted as an extra stud.
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting now is that you see maybe instead of the boot technology giving support to ankles, they sort of strap an ankle thing on, don't they? I mean, Anderson did it, and Wood does it.
Yeah.
They sort of have some kind of contraction that seems to, and Stuart Broad actually.
They have Velcro as well. Velcro rather than laces, which are all a bit of a pain.
Going to give their that especially that ankle they bang down, the sort of leaning ankle.
And Gus, give us a sense of our modern dressing room. Then, our players. You mentioned Stephen Finn. I mean, I know he's not playing for Middlesex anymore, but are there other bowlers who have Toby Roden-Jones or somebody like that who has a sort of a selection of footwear, and what kind of things do they wear?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine now. I mean, the trouble you've got with dressing rooms now, they're not big enough, are they? Because I think they were big enough when we were playing because you had a limited amount of kit, but they're given so many freebies now. I mean, batters are travelling around with 6 or 7 bats in their bags, and therefore just filling up dressing rooms. It's the same with bowlers. Yeah, they'd have probably have half a dozen pairs of boots laid out around their changing position, spare boots, match boots, batting boots. Half and halves. I mean, yeah, they get given so much kit now. But some are a bit more basic. I always remember Ramps sort of saying that he'd love to have been a fast bowler. He'd have just turned up with his boots sort of on his shoulder with a bit of string tied together, running and bowl sort of 3-5 over spells of sheer pace, and then just walk off. And that was
he had a fast bowler's temperament.
He did actually. Yeah, if only it was as easy as that. As easy as just slinging a pair of boots over your shoulder. And I mean, what about other things? You mentioned, Gus, there about socks, pulling your socks up, right? Did you have a particular fascination with certain?
Yeah, how do you put your socks on properly, Gus? I'm intrigued.
No, I know. I mean, it was just obviously you get the seam of the sock in the right position so that it doesn't rub certain parts of your footwear that the ones I suppose that are making contact with the leather or the floor, really. So it's getting the seam of the socks in the right place. But again, socks became, I mean, we sort of had the socknet technology as well, because there were those sort of like fluffy socks that came, didn't they? They were supposed to be sort of absorbent and a bit sort of supportive in
slightly
the
purple. Slightly
yeah,
purple
that's right.
colour.
Mubo used to wear them. David Gower, the red and the orange and the yellow ones that he used to wear. But at the end of my career, there was like a pair of socks they were absolutely tight. I mean, you had to really struggle to get them on. So they sort of held your foot, I suppose, creating some of the support that maybe you're talking about with Anderson and Broad and people like that having, but also with sort of rubber pimples on the sole of them, so that the sock is actually getting grip inside the shoe as well to sort of restrict I suppose because it's the movement of the foot inside the boot that one causes the pressure on the toe, which obviously was what Derek was trying to alleviate when you cut the toe out, but also when you're getting blisters and stuff like that, it's the fact that the foot is moving around inside it. So, yeah, I mean,
were they specially made for cricket though, Gus? Were they specially made for cricket? The pimple ones.
They were specially made for sports athletics.
Well, you see, I wonder. I mean, if you think about it, bowling is pretty unique. I'd say the only thing that matches what we did is a javelin thrower. And I remember once asking an athletics coach, because, you know, we'd bowl we'd bowl whatever, 3 spells a day, 20 odd overs. How many throws would a javelin thrower do in practice? And they said probably no more than 10. So you think, I mean, we were pretty unique in what we put that bloody front leg through and our bodies through.
Absolutely.
And our feet than any other sport.
That's right.
That running and suddenly, you know, decelerating as you bang the foot down. I mean, the pressure.
I do look at. You almost wince at times now when you get close to watching bowlers bowl. You think, blimey, something's got to break there. When
you see it in slow-mo,
yeah, the thrust they put through the body, and you sort of find it hard. I mean, when you were doing it yourself, you thought nothing of it, did you? No. You just did it, but you sort of see it now and get quite close to the way that they throw themselves at the crease, and you think, blimey, no wonder something goes ping every now and then.
Well, I mean,
you know, Yossi, at the start, you sort of mentioned about, you know, what got us through the day and taking things. I mean, I remember at school with those Gary Sobers, you know, my sock, especially the one on the left, would be, you know, full of blood at the end of the day's play, and we just get on with it with no painkillers, you know, because we were having fun.
It's a gruesome subject, isn't it? Sorry to any of those listeners who are feeling a bit squeamish after listening.
But it's a manual job. I mean, it looks glamorous, doesn't it? With Jimmy Anderson running in, bowling in swing, out swing. But it's a manual job. It's
labouring.
It is labouring. You are physically. You've run miles and miles and miles hard. You walk off the field absolutely physically knackered at the end of the day. Sit in your corner, and try and sort of recuperate.
And the 12th man hasn't brought a bloody drink.
So I've worked out that in my career, which is about 40,000 balls, I actually put the equivalent of the Brittany Ferry through my knee and ankle every ball in total, if you add it all up together, which is about 22,000 tons. So in your case, you guys have gone even bigger, so more like oil tankers through you.
Yeah, I don't know what I am now, but I was like 15'10" when I played, so 15 and a half, 16 stone. So
that's a lot. That's a lot of weight through your knee and your ankle. So you're doing well to be alive. Anyway, it's so actually just to finish this part. I mean, just to say, really, the boot for a bowler, fast bowler, is really as important as the tyre on a Formula One car, because it needs to be adaptable. It needs to be able to get speed up and stop as well, and corner and all that. So the boot is so important. There is some
and all conditions, and in
all conditions, absolutely, yeah, in the wet conditions as well, and obviously the rock hard conditions in Australia. So there's been some good technology lately to make the boots a bit more sort of user friendly, I suppose. One of the manufacturers that I've spoken to briefly is Dave Painter, who's produced some quite interesting, quite stylish looking modern boots. That's Painter, Paynter. And he says, after 2 years of meticulous research and manufacturing, we are proud to unveil the groundbreaking Pro X Carbon Speed. This innovative shoe combines cutting edge with comfort, etc. Look up if you want, if you're interested in finding out about those boots. Look up Painter, Paynter. You can Google that. And also another good source of boots for the modern player is at Teddington Sports in southwest London. Again, Google that, Teddington Sports. They can supply them to you online or whatever. So two good sources of boots there. We'll just take a quick break, and afterwards we'll talk more about the sort of other injuries that we've had over time and how we dealt with them as bowlers. But Pring, thanks for bringing this boots topic up, and you can read his piece on the Crickverse at Cricverse. Google that, the Crickverse. It's on Substack. And if you subscribe to our blog, you can join a free draw for tickets for the England-India Test match at Lord's. So let's just quickly alight on the idea of the injuries that you might have sustained and how you dealt with them. And I'm just going to pick up on that because there's a story doing the rounds today that Keith Barker, the left armour from Hampshire, has just finished his suspension for taking a banned substance. And it wasn't his fault. There was an accident and a mistake in the medical department somewhere, I think at Hampshire, and he was given the wrong substance, so accidentally took a banned substance for an injury, and that's caused him to be suspended from the game for nearly a year. And he's just come back. He's just been allowed to play again because he's been basically cleared of any wrongdoing, which is great. But did you, either of you, have to take anything during your career to get through the day's play?
Yes.
What did
Yeah, I suppose your body goes through a process, doesn't it? I mean, you start as an 18-year-old, you're fit, you're lithe, you're full of energy, and all of a sudden you're hit with this workload. Is your body strong enough? Inevitably, you tend to have a stress fracture or something like that somewhere along the line. And you go away, you put on a strengthening course. Alan Moss at Middlesex got me working on a building site, as he would have done. And you try to become more robust. But I suppose I had a hip injury, which was caused maybe by that sort of fall that I had, which I described before. And I suppose you get into a habit. I mean, there was, again, you had a Voltarol retard, which you used to take at night, which to sort of get rid of your aches and pains. And then there was a thing called a Brufen dispersible that you sort of, dissolvable thing that you used to take around tea time. And they were both legal. There were no issues with them whatsoever. And certainly the Brufen dispersible one sort of used to revitalize you. And you thought, well, this is what the legal drugs are doing. God knows what the sort of illegal ones are doing, type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, there is a pretty steady diet of anti-inflammatories and painkillers that you go through, or we went through, I think, to get us through. I think it's more controlled now because people realise the damage that these things can do. But, yeah, I mean, if you weren't playing cricket, you weren't getting paid. Or you were giving someone a chance to take your place. So you did whatever you could to make sure that you were fit and able to play the next game.
And that's
you rarely played 100% fit, so you're always playing with a needle or something. And for that, the physio would inevitably give you, as Gus said, ibuprofen to take to keep the inflammation down or whatever. But I remember another one. I don't remember taking it much myself, but I think it was quite popular, called Solpadeine. Do you remember that? Solpadeine. It was a big white tablet, I think, dissolved or whatever. It was a painkiller of some kind. But you got to remember, I mean, those are when I played for Essex. I mean, science wasn't really invoked because we never had an isotonic drink. I never saw an isotonic drink in the dressing room. We never had drinks breaks unless the temperature was over 90 degrees. And we never had things like bananas knocking around the dressing room. I mean, we'd have a lunch break, biscuits and the sandwiches at tea. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we weren't really taught what to eat. And I remember, absolutely troughing a Lord's lunch, as you would. And then, 3 courses and
with a light ale.
Dodge. No ale, but loads of dodge.
Well, they were on the table. Those beers were on the table,
but
weren't they?
I don't remember anyone actually sampling them.
Ray East used to drink them.
You remember someone drinking them, do you?
Well, no, I just remember the Middlesex, we were sponsored by Lucozade for a period of time, and they used to have those Lucozade blue bottles, didn't they, with the yellow tops, the sort of first sort of things that they brought out. And it was during a drinks break on a hot day at Lord's, and John Embry got the 12th man to come out beforehand and said, "Bring me a lager shandy in one of them bottles." So we're all having our sort of Lucozade rehydration drinks, and Embers was tucking into a lager shandy on the outfield, which was what he wanted to sort of refresh him, and probably worked because he probably got wickets.
Yeah, you don't have to go back very far. I mean, I don't know if you guys met him, but there was a guy who played for Hampshire, and I think maybe 1 or 2 tests for England, Butch White. And he used to have, he told me, every lunchtime for Hampshire, 2 pints of bitter. And if you go further back, I mean, I can't remember his name now. Somebody Carr or someone was captain of Notts.
Yeah,
he used to have a bottle of champagne every home game for lunch, and he used to buy Larwood and Vos, however much beer they wanted to drink over the lunch break. And it's brilliant.
Yeah, actually,
And they took a lot of wickets, Larwood and Vos.
Oh, they did. Bumble tells the story. He loves telling the story of his Test debut at Lord's against Pakistan, and he got 48 before lunch, and he was quite pleased. So he came off at lunch, and as you said, Gus, there were ales on the tables at Lord's in the dining room. He thought, well, I'm 48 not out at lunch, done bloody well. I'll have a beer. So he had a beer with his lunch, and he was out straight after. So he didn't get.
Well, I always remember. I mean, the lunches at Lord's are sort of infamous, aren't they? And Nancy loved the roast. This Nancy Doyle, wasn't it, who used to sort of cook for us? She's lovely, fiery, but brilliant sort of servant to MCC and the players. And it was always a roast, wasn't it? Roast beef, roast lamb, roast chicken, roast potatoes, and everything like that. And you'd go out. I mean, I just remember
and
Keith
pudding
Brown,
and cheese.
And pudding and cheese, yes.
Yeah, Keith Brown, who used to give lunch a fearsome crack. He was our keeper, and you'd bowl one down the leg side in the first over after lunch, and he'd just wave it through. It wasn't. He couldn't move because he'd sort of had a big roast. He was still digesting a big roast lunch.
We deserved those lunches because of the hardship that you have as a bowler. I mean, it wasn't. I seemed to always end up bowling one of the early overs after lunch, and I felt bilious. Because of the troughing, and you only had 20 minutes to eat it, of course.
Well, you think though that science would say you need to refuel, and I remember, in Australia again. I mean, it's hot out there in Brisbane, but looking on with sort of interest as Bob Willis, all he'd have was 2 scoops of ice cream for lunch. That was it.
Well, I got to the stage as well where I didn't go up there for lunch at Lord's because it was too much. You just used to have a couple of ham rolls. But I remember once in the West Indies on an England tour, and I love rotis. The rotis in Trinidad were gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I had one of those we were in the field, and I thought, well, I'm bloody hungry, so I'll have a roti. And of course, you're so hot and sweaty because you're bowling, and it's a really sort of tropical climate. And it's just like a stone in my stomach, this sort of roti. I hadn't digested whatsoever. I had terrible indigestion after. And that was the last time that I did it. So, later in the game, it was the game where England were bowled out for 46. And I thought, so I'm not having a roti, but I'll have it when we've bowled the West Indies out, and I'll go around to the roti shop sort of within the ground and get myself a nice roti and come back. And by the time I'd sort of got my sweaty kit off, we were 2 down because others was out and ramps had been run out. And I'd only got as far as Kentucky Fried Chicken before I had to turn back round and go because we were 5 or 6 down. So I never even got my roti that day.
You probably felt undigested, Gus, because you had the chicken roti, and of course in Trinidad the chicken's still got the bones in, mate. They don't take the bones out.
Actually, Wayne Daniel used to bring rotis into the dressing room on a Sunday as part of our Sunday lunch. So we had the Nancy Sunday lunch, and then we'd have a Wayne Daniel imported roti from Labrador.
They're gorgeous. They're gorgeous.
Which were absolutely fantastic. But I don't think they did help your cricket if you were fielding first.
No.
Just to finish, we've talked about the hardship of bowling and all that and the pain of it. What about the pleasure of it? Is it actually, would you recommend being a bowler? I would just say myself that there is something incredibly sort of satisfying about that delivery which you generate and which lifts off the pitch and, I don't know, goes past the edge and through to the keeper 20 yards back. Taken sort of above his face, or gets the edge, or takes out the off stump. There's something beautifully enjoyable and satisfying about that because you've done that all yourself without any bat or racket or it's just your biorhythms that have generated that pace. But put into context, both of you, what the pleasure of bowling can be to offset all that hardship.
I think you described it pretty much there, to be honest. I mean, when it is, you run up smooth, you hit the crease nice, you know that it's a good ball when the ball's probably 6 inches out of your hand, don't you? Because just it's a sensation bowling. And that ball hitting the length, moving away. As you say, some of the most pleasurable balls you bowl probably beat the bat. They don't get a wicket, but you know that you've almost perfected what you're trying to do on that delivery. It's a perfect length. It's got some good pace, some good bounce. It nips away. And equally, I think as a bowler, I mean, all right, it's a batter's game. Batters tend to be the sort of people in charge, rule makers, all the ones, etc., etc. But bowlers are in control. A batter reacts to a bowler. If I bowl short, a batter goes back. If I bowl full, he goes forward. So I'm in control. And I used to think, well, it didn't matter whether you're Don Bradman, Brian Lara, or Sachin Tendulkar. If I bowl at 85 miles an hour, a ball on a good length that nips away, you're struggling. So as a bowler, you control the game because the game doesn't start until you let go of the ball. So to have that control and to have that, I suppose, ability to, if you get right what you do, you're going to be good. You're going to have a good day, aren't you? I mean, I say a good day. I mean, some days the hardest column to control as a bowler is the wicket column. You can be fit enough to bowl your overs. You can bowl with control, so you can bowl maidens and keep your run rate under control. But yeah, to sort of walk off with, I say, 6 for 50 off 25 overs, I always found more satisfying than maybe 6 for 80 off 14 overs where you've gone for a few runs. So to sort of put a really good day's work in and to see it rewarded is hugely rewarding.
I mean, Gus is right. Bowlers are the conductors of the game, and when your rhythm is on song and everything is feeling good, and that is when the great pleasure comes. And I mean, people talk about stumps being splattered. That's a great sight in the game, but for me, the ball was swinging and the rhythm was good. If I could just swing it away, bloke nicks it, second slip, that is my ideal dismissal, because that's what I'm trying for. That's what I'm trying for, and that's when a plan works. And also, the other pleasure is when a plan does work and you try something different. I remember once playing at Grace Road, and Neil Foster, who's a very fine bowler for Essex and England, was at mid-off, and Laurie Potter was sort of digging in and holding us up a bit. And I said to him, I'm just going to chuck this a bit wider here because I reckon and a bit fuller, and I reckon he's going to have a little drive at it. And he did exactly that, nicked it straight to Gucci, second slip. And, old Fozzie thought I was a genius after that. But that's the great pleasure. Of course, the sort of what differentiates, though, bowlers, feeling good, etc., and the truly great bowlers is that they will get results when they're not feeling good and the rhythm's a bit down or what have you. They still turn up. It's like a batsman who's not, scratching around, but will still get 70 for you. I mean, that's the real the measuring of a great bowler, I think.
I think you sit here now and all right, you're 58 and you put some weight on, but it's being in that competing, isn't it? You want to be out there competing, trying to get the better of someone at the other end, and most days you don't. But as I say, offering some sort of assistance to the team, and if it might not be in the wicket column, but it's a huge satisfaction to sort of just, I suppose, get back in the dressing room, weary, but satisfied and happy with what you've done, sit in your corner and sort of just reflect on a job well done. It's hugely satisfying.
Yeah, we've justified our 8 pints of bitter at the end of the day, and the batters haven't.
That's absolutely right. Beer for bowlers, and what is it for batsmen then? Unfortunately, it's often silverware or, prizes. Man of the match awards always. Bowlers get neglected. Anyway, well, I hope you've enjoyed our little sort of dip into the bowler's corner, if you like. And just to recap on those stats, by the way, Gus, you say you don't often win the battle, but out of those 172,000 balls, 3,000 wickets overall between us all, which means we took a wicket every 50 balls or so. So that's about 8 overs or something. So a wicket every 8 overs isn't too bad for all that hardship. And it's just, it's just a wonderful feeling when you get that wicket, you get that 1 over the batter. So listen,
so that's about a wicket. My quick maths, that's a wicket for every about 5 kilometres you run, then, isn't it?
I mean, that's a lot of hard work, isn't it? It's a lot of hard work. So hopefully you're playing violins at home, and we'd love to hear your stories also of bowling boots that you lost or had freshly made or adapted or whatever, or any injuries that you had from bowling. So you can post those online to us. And also, don't forget, as I said, the Crickverse, CRICVERSE. If you subscribe to that, you can join the competition to win tickets for the England-India Test match at Lord's, which is sold out. So get involved. Guys, thanks very much for your time. It's great to reconnect, and all the best. Thanks.
Yeah, loved it.
Cheers.
Very enjoyable.